So welcome back to another episode, and again, taking advantage of Andrew being here, we both have the same shirt, and we're like, we have to wear it for this episode. This will be perfect. And
guess what we're going to talk about?
What are we going to talk about today? What is this?
Metroid.
Metroid. I love Metroid. No, we're going to talk about Zelda, and we're going to talk about all of the main games on the console. So just so you guys understand, we're not talking about any of the Game Boy games or any of the offshoot games. We're talking about the main series on console. So I remember we did our Final Fantasy talk, and I said that. You know, we're just talking about the main Final Fantasy games in the series, and everybody's like, but you didn't mention the Final Fantasy Tactics. I'm like...
So unfortunately, we won't be talking about Zelda Tactics today.
Zelda Tactics and all that. And the reason why we wanted to get together and talk about this is because we grew up on the same street. We have known each other for 30 years.
It's been a long time. Hard to believe.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah. Andrew moved into our neighborhood with your brother. What year was that?
1987.
Holy cow, 1987. And we hit it off as video game friends. Like, you had the computers. I was going over there. I couldn't believe, you know, because my family didn't have a computer. I was like, oh my God, look at all this stuff. And then we both got an NES.
Right, the NES had launched by the time I joined the neighborhood crew,
right.
But neither of us had one at that
That's
point.
Right, yeah. It wasn't until like late 87 I got one.
Yeah, actually my brother got an NES with Zelda for Christmas in 1987. I got some Transformers thing or another.
What the
I
hell?
have no idea. No idea. It was Sean's.
Oh my God.
And I apologize, sorry Sean. I basically took his Christmas present and didn't let him...
Ran with it.
Yeah.
So wait a second, before we get into all this, didn't you and your brother get into some huge arguments about who's playing that machine?
I'm sure. It was his Christmas present. I was being a real jackass.
Yeah.
But it was Zelda. I was hooked immediately. And we were able to play it in the neighborhood before we got our own copies.
Yeah.
Because Mike Hole had it in the summer.
Okay, now, I've mentioned this story before, is that we went down to Mike Hole's house. He's the first person to have Zelda, as you said, in our neighborhood.
Right.
And I saw the game, and I didn't understand it at all. I was like, what is this, an action game? You know, the screen flipped up to another thing. Is this a different level? I didn't get it.
And we realistically, we'd never seen anything like it.
Not like that. But you, as I said at the time, seemed to understand how this works. Like, what was your take on that at the time?
I don't know why it resonated so much with me. I mean, we probably the week before would have been playing Dungeons and Dragons on the Intellivision. I mean,
Yeah.
Night and day difference. But there's just something about the environment,
It was in a gold box.
The gold box was really cool too. Although I don't know that I ever saw the box when I was playing it at Mike's house.
I think, no, we just saw the gold cartridge.
That's
at that
right.
time.
You definitely saw the gold cartridge. And I mean, any cartridge was unique at that time, but a gold cartridge? I mean, they'd never done that before.
It was interesting, and then all the TV commercials were going on, and...
That's right. I'll never forget the guy in that black bodysuit thing and Tectites, levers, that whole thing.
I know, because that was I believe that was a Canadian television commercial.
Well, certainly we saw it on Canadian TV.
Well, we did, and so yeah, and that commercial we would always talk about, and like, there's something about this game. This game's a big deal game, and then you got Zelda before me. You did.
Well, technically, Sean got it first.
Oh, right. So that Christmas, he got Zelda?
Yes.
And
And you know, Super Mario Brothers was packed in. So.
Yeah, oh my God, that's a hell of a Christmas.
Yeah.
So what happened? So to explain that Christmas, were you fighting with your brother? Like, he hooks it up, and he's like, did he get it? Was he playing it, and then you said, no, I'm taking it?
I'm sure back at that time, Dad probably hooked it up.
Well, yeah. Make sure your parents are there to assemble all the accessories.
Yeah, I don't even remember which TV it would have been on or anything like that.
TV downstairs?
Probably.
Yeah.
But I honestly, I just have memories of playing the game. The arguments and fighting to be able to do so were so ancillary, I don't even really remember it.
Compared to the game that you're playing,
yeah,
exactly.
That was what I wanted to do. It was just noise.
Yeah.
And it just tuned out the noise, and I guess I was the bigger brother, so I kind of won. And I'm not sure that he was really super into it anyway.
Yeah.
He's certainly not a big gamer.
He probably liked Mario Brothers, but then he's like, yeah, you know, he kind of left that. And Zelda was... It was a very difficult game to wrap your head around, and you started to understand it. And I have so many memories coming down the road, sitting on the couch, and watching you play this. And the dungeon music will always remind me of your basement. Whenever I listen to that music now, it always reminds me of that time, which would be like late 87.
It probably would have been into 88.
It would have been 88, yeah. And just sitting there and playing that game and just hearing the music, and it's like, wow, yeah.
And I mean, to this day, it's been 30 years, and I can close my eyes and hear the dungeon music.
Me too.
That is so iconic that that's just burned into my memory.
It really was, and then so...
And, I mean, of course, it was a fantastic game. It wasn't just, some sort of event because it was early in the launch cycle of the NES or anything like that. Zelda was... I mean, look at the Tower of Games. Zelda was seminal.
Yeah.
It spawned so much and pushed a genre in a direction that I don't think anything had taken it before.
The sense of discovery and adventure and all that was done in an incredible way, combining some Dungeons and Dragons-esque things and swords and monsters.
And the idea that there were things you couldn't do, areas you couldn't access because you didn't have the right items. You could see the little the rivers that were one tile wide, but you couldn't cross it until you got the raft.
Yeah, things
and
like
you
that.
knew that, and you could see places where you could plant a bomb, but you didn't have bombs, and just stuff like that. The way that it wasn't just a linear progression, because back then so many games were a strict linear progression. You didn't go back and revisit places when you had expanded capabilities.
Yeah,
I mean. Today we've certainly taken that to the nth degree with all the Metroidvanias and the open world games we get. I mean, it's gone nuts. Yeah. But back then, nothing that I was aware of had done that.
And so the first game had such an impact on us. It was incredible. Where did you first see Zelda 2? Do you even remember that?
I was trying to remember. I never actually owned Zelda 2 at the time it came out.
Neither did I.
I bought it used afterwards. So, but back in the day, despite claims on this show to the contrary, I didn't have every game. And when you were in a neighborhood of kids, not everybody had every game. So one or two kids in the neighborhood would get it, and you'd wait your turn and you'd borrow it.
Yes.
And I can't remember from whom, but I definitely borrowed Zelda 2.
Yeah.
And it was... I gotta say at the beginning, it was kind of a smack in the face. It was so different from Zelda 1 that I really didn't understand what I was playing. But I kept at it. And the more I did, and I understood the concept of the overworld, and then going into, the side-scrolling for fights or towns, it actually started to make sense.
But when you first walk out of that palace, and you're walking and all the enemies attack you, and you're like,
right.
I'm okay, I'm in 2D, side view, and you're like, okay, what's happening here? And then you fight, and then you're like, where am I going? What am I doing?
Yeah, we didn't have the internet and trailers and E3s and things like that. We had no idea what to expect from Zelda 2 other than it was the next Zelda. And of course you're going to think it's going to be like the first game. And it wasn't. It was a radical departure. And in hindsight, I actually give Nintendo a lot of props for doing that.
It's a lot of balls. Changes formula.
To shake this thing up. I mean, in a world today where we get sequels that are so rehashed from the one before it, to go in a totally different direction, wow.
And we kind of find that later on they do that again in Zelda.
They do.
Where they completely reinvent themselves.
They've done a remarkable job of reinventing what you expect as a player from the series. And one thing I absolutely remember from Zelda 2 is back in those days, Nintendo had a game counselor's hotline.
Oh, yeah.
I can always remember the area code was 206, and it was a...
Your parents let you phone that. I can't believe
No, they didn't. I got in a lot of shit because that was toll charges, but I couldn't resist.
Do you remember
I didn't know which Stalfos I was supposed to hit to get the whatever it was I was looking for.
And you're like, I want to know.
Right, or where the Phantom Wall was, and I couldn't resist calling and asking for help.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble because
I remember you phoned up for was it Castlevania 2, didn't you as well?
I'm sure. Yeah, because they had the game counselor hotline that would take any game Nintendo made.
You were a lot braver than me. Your parents must have been like, "Oh, it's okay, Andrew." My parents were like, "You're dead." I'd be beaten to death if I call those numbers. Because they'd be like $20 for a 1-minute call.
It was expensive.
So stupid
it was expensive,
back then.
But hey, it was worth it.
Oh, totally. Who cares? And that's something to say about Zelda 2. Very difficult game.
Yeah, it was. It really was.
Very difficult game. Didn't hold your hand. It wasn't easy. Very fulfilling when you get to the end and got it through Shadow Link. That was awesome. But
I didn't finish it the first time I borrowed it.
Yeah.
When I was still a little kid. I think
it took me a couple of years to finish that game.
Yeah. I had to come back later, probably on the copy I bought used later on.
Yeah.
Before I could actually finally beat it. And you're right, Shadow Link was tough.
Oh my God, crazy. But fun. The music, everything. So good.
Magical.
And then we get into such a classic, phenomenal game, Link to the Past. Now here. A lot of people are saying nowadays, A Link to the Past isn't that good. It's just people are too nostalgic for it. It's too linear. It's too whatever. I think this game holds up, but what do you think?
So certainly there's definitely nostalgia with Link to a Past.
Of course, like with all the games, right?
it's warranted. It's justified. It's. I don't agree that it's linear. It has a lot of the same things that made the original Zelda work. The expansion of powers, getting different tools and items, and opening up places that you couldn't go to earlier in the game.
The light world,
right,
yeah.
Right. Things you could get to with the hook shot or not, and stuff like that. That I think it was brilliant the way it was designed. The Dark World and Light World, of course, that gives maximum reusability of very similar assets.
Sure.
But it totally worked in a gameplay context.
Well.
And the world was huge, and just... I loved everything about Legend of Zelda. Link to the Past.
Link to the Past
Fantastic
is
game.
Brilliant stuff, and I've talked about it numerous times, going to your house and seeing it. Yeah,
it's frankly my favorite game in the series.
Is it?
It
So
really is.
that's interesting because I'll get to mine later
Yeah,
on.
it is a Link to the Past.
It's a great choice, and you can't go wrong with it. There's so much was going right with the game, the graphics, the music, everything. I mean, you can't complain.
I can close my eyes and listen to and hear the fairy music.
Me
Link to the
too.
Past.
Me
It's
too.
It'll never leave me.
Yeah, this is a classic game, and we're moving ahead here. Remember this small... you probably don't remember this, and the audience won't remember this game.
Oh, wow. They had a Zelda game on the N64?
Cult classic, I don't know. Some people played it, some people didn't. Yeah, Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. I never had an N64. So the only time I played Ocarina of Time was when I came to stay with you.
I remember
I
that.
would wake up early and turn on the N64 to play Ocarina of Time.
And we got to say that Andrew moved away when I was 20 years old. You were 18 at the time. You went to the University of Calgary to take engineering. But Andrew has come back nearly every year for 23 years, and we played video games for the entire week that we're hanging out and reminisce and do all that kinds of stuff. So that's why we get a chance to do things like this. So yes, you were doing one of those trips, and you got to play this game then.
Right, and of course I couldn't finish Ocarina of Time just playing a couple of hours in the morning.
Yeah.
But I certainly got a taste of it and what I was missing. But yeah, I ultimately never did get an N64, and I didn't actually get to play through Ocarina of Time all the way until... we'll get to it in a minute, when you could get the special edition of Wind Waker on the GameCube that came with an Ocarina of Time disc packed in.
Was that Wind Waker or was that Twilight Princess?
It was Wind Waker.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah. So I was able to go back and play Ocarina of Time on the GameCube to finally say that I had participated in the magic.
So it was a couple of years afterwards. How was that experience then?
It still held up. I couldn't, because I didn't really play a lot of the N64 version, I couldn't tell you what they remade or anything like that.
Yeah.
But the game itself still held up. It's very similar to what Nintendo was able to do with Mario 64. To take something that was just entrenched in 2D and bring it into a 3D world in a way that you can't imagine it never was. It just worked so well, and the lock-on targeting, everything about that game worked.
Do you ever remember like the old Game Fan magazines, and they would show screenshots of this Link that had a big pointy nose? I was like, what is this? I was a little nervous, but I was excited. And then they had some E3 demo showing it, and I was like, okay, cool. And the game lived up to the hype.
It really did.
It did.
It was a masterpiece.
I remember driving down to pick up this version of the game. This is the original game I got back then. I was in film school, and I remember driving, listening to Link to the Past music in the car on tape.
Wow.
Getting ready to pick this up, and coming home and putting it in. I'm going, wow, and that Lost Woods music and all that, and I knew at the time a whole different generation of fans grew up with this. Like a whole different generation of fans grew up with Final Fantasy VII.
It's true.
It was ignited.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who started their time with Zelda with Ocarina of Time,
which is weird to us because we're that old.
Right.
You know?
Right. They began in 3D.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty cool. It's pretty cool. So. Going from that, we get into a game that caused a big controversy
now,
at the time.
We will say that although we said console games, we're not talking about Majora's Mask because it's not really part of the canonical main series. So,
but it is, and to be honest with you, we just don't have a lot of experience with it, and I'd rather not bullshit my way through something that I can't speak, really well about. Peanut Butter Gamer has done some incredible videos on that, and I think it's very dark, very cool. I played the 3DS one, and I really like it, but I haven't played all the way through it.
Yeah, me either.
I can honestly say that. So I'm not a hater. I'm just a not knower of it as well as I should be, for sure. But anyways, we get to this next game that is a bit controversial, and I had no problem with it. Me
neither.
I remember seeing the E3 when they were showing Mario Sunshine, and then they showed Wind Waker, and there this Toon Link ran out, and this is what I did. I embraced it, where everybody else was like going, oh, this is not. What have you done to
it pushed
Link?
a lot of people away, but Frankly, I love the whole cel-shaded way they set that game up.
And
it just worked for me.
The smoke and the way the smoke bloomed up and all that was very
The only issue I had with the original release of Wind Waker, because they corrected it in the HD remaster, is the amount of time you'd spend on the boat going between the islands.
I never had an issue. Do you know, to be honest,
I thought it was a little bit lengthy.
I was a smoker at the time, so I would just light up a cigarette and I'd be like,
that was your break time.
I'm like, this is great. You're on the ocean. Keep on going, Link. You got it. You got this for me. I didn't ever have a problem with that. And the thing about Wind Waker that I always kind of remember is I found that game very easy. I finished the game in a week.
It was. Even the ominous, like, sort of, bandit camps or whatever you'd call it. The music would get all sinister and it was dark and you'd be sneaking around and then you realized, oh, wait a minute, I don't really need to. I was making more drama than the game actually had.
Kill. The combat was so easy.
Yeah.
I never had a hard time fighting a goblin or moblin or whatever the fuck. Yep. I never had a hard issue with any monster in the game. And
even the bosses were simple.
pretty big cakewalk. But I look back on the game so fondly. I enjoy the game.
Again, it's another example of Nintendo doing something different with Zelda.
Taking a
risk. And, they could have rehashed and remade Ocarina of Time and called it Ocarina of Time 2, and I'm sure people would have loved it. But to take a risk?
I know.
I give them just a lot of credit for trying something different. And I thought it totally worked.
I did like it. But then our next game on the Wii, Twilight Princess, they kind of went back to a bit more of a mature-looking Link, a bit more of a mature-looking world in that sense, and abandoned the cartoony look of the Wind Waker.
They did, and kind of like Breath of the Wild, this was a game that crossed 2 console generations. Correct. So I played it on the GameCube. I didn't play it on the Wii.
Yeah.
And it was. I still liked it. It was still a Zelda game. It was very different. The turning into a wolf was very different, but it still felt like a Zelda game to me. I still enjoyed playing it. I look forward to playing it. I played all the way through it. The puzzles, the combat, it still all worked for me.
The only thing that was a bit of an issue for me, yes, I did like the game quite a lot, was when I came home with my Wii and this game, and at the time, component cables weren't out. I had to hook it up composite to a high-definition television, and I was like, what's wrong with the graphics? They're so muddy. And I did not appreciate the graphics until they did the high-definition remaster. I finally was happy. Because eventually when I did get the component cables, I hooked it up and I was like, I guess it's the best it's going to look. We were already in the world of high definition.
That's true.
And that was a bad point to the game. It really was at that time.
Right. I mean, you could clearly see its GameCube origins at that point.
Which wasn't a bad thing, but the problem is I wanted it in fucking high definition.
That's exactly right. When you played it on the GameCube, it looked great. But
on a regular TV type of thing,
But when you were on an HD TV on a Wii,
it stretched it out and it just looked muddy and and all that. And so I enjoyed the game, but the graphics I got to appreciate finally with the HD remaster. Now, another controversial game we get into here, and I must admit, I said Majora's Mask, I don't have a lot of experience with the game, but I'm not a hater on it. This game, I can honestly say, I'm not a huge fan of. I'm not a hater. I don't love it, though, and that is Skyward Sword, and I know a lot of people who really like this game.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this was another example of Nintendo trying to do something different. The way they were putting the waggle controls into a Zelda game.
Yeah. Which they already had in the Wii version.
True, but this game really pushed the envelope of that.
Yes, it did.
It really did. And of course, I didn't play Twilight Princess on the Wii, so I was using just a standard Game Bird controller to play Twilight Princess when I did. So this was a big departure for me.
Yeah.
I give Nintendo credit for trying something new. I always love that they try something new. But to me, it seemed kind of like a solution in search of a problem. Meaning that I don't think it added more than it detracted. The motion control stuff to me felt more like it got in the way than it enhanced.
I felt that way too. Like I just wanted to relax and just play a game. I don't want to have to get like dramatic with everything. Right. You know what I mean?
But I give them a lot of credit for trying to do something different.
How far into this game did you get?
Not too far.
No,
I probably got about 4 hours into it.
Yeah, I was probably 10 plus, and then was just like. It's not that I disliked it, I just put it down. I had to do all these fetch quests and I kind of just got a little tired. I was like, and I don't want to say at this point, and this is a fascinating point that we're going to get into, I just felt like I started to get tired of the Zelda formula at this point. Go to this dungeon, get an item and use it in another dungeon. And I felt like I was being there, done that so many times before.
You're right, and that sort of methodology, that blueprint is something they had since well, even going back all the way to Zelda 1, when you would get some kind of tool in a dungeon and you could take it to the area that unlocked for the next dungeon.
Right, yeah.
But in 3D, even back to Ocarina of Time, had that same format.
Yeah.
You'd get a tool in a dungeon, they teach you how to use it, the boss's weak point would be that tool, and you'd go and do the same thing again in the next dungeon.
Yeah, you get the hook shot and use the hook shot and you have to jump over certain lava pits and stuff like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this one, also because it wasn't in high def, I was like, that really hurt it again for me. And I was like, why is this not in high definition? I really want to play some. And I like the look of it. The art style is amazing in this game.
It is.
All that.
It really is.
I like the look of the characters, the world. I love the whole Skyward Sword, in the sky kind of thing.
They definitely nailed the design, no question.
Yeah, and so I just thought, okay, maybe this game just wasn't for me. And so that was that. And then I am so surprised by this game still to this day. I wasn't somebody caught up in the hype of a new machine and a new Zelda, because there's been lots of new machines and new Zeldas over the years.
Right.
Then I played this game, and this game, you said that Link to the Past is your favorite Zelda game of all time. Breath of the Wild is my favorite Zelda game of all time. To me, a 10 out of 10 game. I even think one of the greatest video games I've ever played in my life. I've never experienced a world this huge, this amazing. It took the ideas of Zelda 1 and exploded it. I loved everything in Zelda 1, but this was like Zelda 1 got 10 by 10,000. It was unbelievable. They did everything I've ever wanted in a Zelda game. As much as like Skyward Sword was limited, Breath of the Wild was not.
Yeah.
You could go anywhere, and I said in my video before, I turned to Kim at one point, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this game. I was like, I probably about 10 hours in, I'm like, I think I need to quit because I felt so overwhelmed. But the game is just so full of secrets. You travel from A to Z, but in between there's so many things to do. It's an amazing game. An amazing game, and you have not taken
I'm sure like many folks who are watching this video, I don't have a Switch.
Yes.
Can't get a Switch, can't find a Switch. So Breath of the Wild is something that I have to look forward to, and I do look forward to it. I take it very seriously when John says, this is my favorite Zelda of all time. Because he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've played it a little bit here, sort of touring around, lighting horses on fire and other fun stuff like that.
We did that the other night, yeah.
But, I mean, I really would like to seriously play this game, so...
The physics in it, and I mean, it's amazing that they really reinvented themselves at this point, and I didn't think Nintendo had it in them to make Breath of the Wild. I can't. It's like some other Bethesda or somebody else came in and did this.
To have nailed an open world your first time out,
like this big of an open world. Yeah.
I mean, wow. Open world in the industry is not exactly new, but Nintendo has never done anything like this at this scale, and it just works so well on every level.
Yeah.
It's remarkable that the same company that made these games could do it again with the level of innovation in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, it's been a hell of a ride up to this point, and it's been really a lot of fun. Even with some of the games that I'm not so familiar with, and I didn't spend a lot of time with, like Skyward Sword. With Skyward Sword, I want a high definition remaster.
That'd be great.
And even Majora's Mask, I would like a high definition remaster. I know we got on the 3DS, but on a console.
Yeah,
I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, I like to sit in a chair and play Zelda. That's just my thing.
That's my thing, and that's how I played this.
And if they release it for the Switch, you could still pick it up and take it with you if you had to.
Oh my God! See,
wouldn't that be cool?
That is a cool thing, and yeah, we've had a lot of fun, and obviously we played a lot of the handheld versions over the years, but we're only talking about the main console versions of this series right now.
Tip of my hat to A Link Between Worlds.
Yes, everybody loves that game. That game is the music in that is incredible. Minish Cap, I'll tip my
That's a good one.
Cap.
Yes, tip your cap.
I really enjoyed that game quite a lot back in the day. So, anyways, guys, what are some of your favorites in the main Zelda series on console? Please tell us below. So, anyways, guys, until next time.